Welcome back to this special edition of Power Play. Our front bench has just taken us through the top political stories of 2023. Now it's time to look forward into the new year. What's going to dominate Canadian politics in 2024? They're back with their predictions. Brian Gallant, Lisa Raitt, Tom Mulcair, and Rob Benzie. Brian, I'll start with you. What do you think the big story is going to be next year? What are you watching for?
As mentioned, the safe bet is most likely to say some version of affordability, cost of living, which will no doubt be one of the biggest stories, if not the biggest story. And just to add to what we were talking about, even if interest rates go down, it probably means that unemployment rate has ticked up and the GDP has been stagnant or even maybe went in the wrong direction. So either way, there's some version of that that's going to be a big part of 2024 political discourse. That said, I'm going to go with maybe more of a wild card, figuratively and literally. I'll say U.S. politics and more specifically Donald Trump. I'm not sure foreign affairs is usually at the heart of elections, with the exception of when it involves the U.S. I think Canadians are very astute, very attuned to the fact that the U.S. is such an important partner on so many fronts, including, of course, on the economic front. And with the presidential election sort of ramping up in the U.S., I think it has the potential of overriding anything that's happening domestically here in Canada.
Yeah, I think people underestimate how interested Canadians are. And I know because I used to, for all the years during the pandemic when I was covering the Trump press conferences and our press conferences, like I can tell you as a fact, the ratings go through the roof when Donald Trump is on the TV because people are in this country, Canadians, I'm not talking outside, they are glued to sort of the ups and downs. Now, he was president at the time. I don't know if it's going to be the same this time around, but I think it's a really valid point. Lisa, what do you think the big story next year will be?
I'm going to follow along in Brian's theme. I think it's very noteworthy that there's 40 countries in the world representing 50% of the global GDP going to an election. US, UK, India, Taiwan, South Africa, Russia, all of them. All of them could have a massive impact on domestic politics and the way in which the world trades, the way in which the world operates, and of course, whether or not we're going to have peace in this world. So that's what I'm going to be watching. Massive. It has a massive impact on the geopolitics of investment and on the banking industry as well. So it's a big one for me.
Tom, what about you?
Well, domestically, I would say that, and I hinted at it earlier, that Mr. Trudeau is likely to step down. And so I think in that case, the Liberal leadership race would probably dominate the news, the choices. We tend to forget that the party that likes to style itself feminist, the Liberals, of the 5 parties in Parliament in Ottawa, there's only one that's never had a woman leader, and that's the Liberal Party of Canada. So we'll see if they can change that. Obviously, the person in the wings would be Chrystia Freeland. I know that Mark Carney would also be more than willing to be chosen, so that might prove an interesting race. Internationally, I'm with Lisa on the word peace, because we tend to underestimate just how dangerous it is what's happening right now. We've been for 2.5 months watching the horror of the terrorist attack against innocent Israeli citizens by Hamas. We watched 5,000 rockets rain down on civilian targets in Israel. We watched Israel's reaction. And now the international community trying to come to grips with that. But it's still a tinderbox. You know, the northern border of Israel and Lebanon is anything but secure. And we tend to, because it's there for so long, we tend to forget just how dangerous Russia-Ukraine is. So I think that that's something that we're all going to be watching in the coming year.
Rob, what about you? What's your story next year?
Yeah, I mean, Tom stole mine. February 29th, 2024 is the 40th anniversary of February 29th, 1984, when a prime minister named Trudeau took a walk in the snow and surprised everyone and announced he was resigning. Justin Trudeau's father, Pierre, did that 40 years ago almost. And I'll be intrigued to see if Justin Trudeau does something on that day. I mean, look, it's a flyer. I'm terrible at predictions. But I agree with Tom. If Mr. Trudeau steps down, I think that the next Liberal leader might well be a woman. And I actually think could be Foreign Affairs Minister Melanie Joly. She's very organized. We had her at the editorial board of the Star recently. And she's pretty persuasive in those kinds of forums. So I'm going to be watching for that. And if that happens, I'm going to see what the impact is on the polls, because so much of Pierre Poilievre's successful narrative has been based on alleged hatred for Justin Trudeau, just inflation. Right. Trudeau did this, Trudeau did that. If there's a new Liberal leader, does that dissipate? I don't know. It might, and you have to be very careful. I think there is certainly a time for a change kind of outlook out there in this country, but if the Liberals change leaders and then turn to Canadians and say, look, it's change you can trust, what does that do for the NDP? What does that do for the Conservatives? I don't know.
Well, I'm going to put the other two on the spot and ask them. Lisa, do you think that Justin Trudeau will not be leader of the Liberal Party or will be leader of the Liberal Party this time next year?
Double negative.
Just
yes, he's going to be the leader. I know.
Yeah.
Yes, he is going to be the leader. He'll lead them into the next election.
Why do you think that?
I can be sarcastic or I can be true. The truth is, I think he wants to, and you all know what I would have to say. I think it's because he definitely wants to run against Pierre Poilievre. He likes to win. He may have some records he wants to break. And he believes that he's the one person that can win. And as quite frankly, as a leader, you kind of have to have that conceit.
Right. Brian, what do you think? Do you think this time next year, Justin Trudeau will be the leader of the Liberals?
If you look at his speeches and him addressing the question, you have to say yes. I mean, look, I know he's got some chomps when it comes to acting, but he definitely gets all riled up. He gets energized when asked or when demonstrating that he's keen to run again. So if you base it on that, and I've seen speeches in person, it seems sincere. So that said, I mean, I will open the door to the sense that maybe he is running right now, but February 29th comes and there's a snowstorm in Ottawa and he goes for a walk and he decides maybe I don't want to. So he can change his mind, and one could argue that he has to say that stuff with the conviction that he's doing at the moment. He has to do that until he ultimately makes the announcement, but he's pretty convincing, I have to say.
Yeah, that's sort of my view in a way, Tom. And I guess you're the contrarian among the group, but I think he has no choice but if he said, well, I'm kind of considering that I might also take a walk in the snow, then all of a sudden he becomes a complete lame duck.
Oh, no, that is an absolute political truism. The minute you open that door a crack, you're a permanent lame duck. So he's got no choice. He's been doing the rounds. He did the ed boards. He did a big long one with La Presse in Montreal. No, I'm sticking around. But he's received 2 minority governments in a row. That's already an indication that Canadians were wavering a little bit. And the idea would be for him to come back in a year and a half and say, oh, by the way, now I want another 4 years. I just don't find it plausible. But I'm going to be a little bit like Brian and say, well, they're on the one hand, on the other hand. But my overall view is that he's worth a lot, in terms of boards of directors and big international jobs and the like. And, your best before date is your best before date. And I'm not sure he's going to be as valuable a product on that market if he's crushed in an election.
Yeah, true.
I got 30 seconds left. Last word to you, Rob. I think also kind of jumping off what Lisa said, ultimately, everything you hear from people around him is they do believe he is the person in the Liberals to take on Pierre Poilievre and that he wants to assume that role.
I mean, he certainly believes that. But remember, Stephen Harper in 2015 was convinced that only he could beat Justin Trudeau, and he couldn't stand the idea that Trudeau could have his job. And I think Trudeau feels about Pierre Poilievre the way that Harper felt about him. And I think when hubris and ego get mixed up in this, and politicians need that, and I'm with 3 great politicians on this panel, and I love conversing with you guys every week, but there is a certain amount of kind of super ego involved in politics, and I have a lot of admiration for people who can do it. It's a very tough job, but I don't know if I'm, to Tom's point, if I'm Justin Trudeau, do you want to go out on a low or do you want to go out on a high? And if who knows? I mean, if the polls continue to narrow, then the Liberals may be stuck with him, and he may be stuck with them.